Artifacts and commitments, the increment and the definition of done. The increment is, as the name implies, an incremental contribution towards the product goal. If we can accept the idea that the product goal typically is going to span multiple sprints, and each sprint will have its own sprint goal contributing to the overarching product goal, then within each sprint, you may have multiple increments contributing to that sprint goal, which then, of course, ultimately contributes to the product goal. There is a sense of additive work being created. And I understand that not all teams are in a position to be incrementally moving towards something larger. Many of you have worked in team environments where you get particular requests that would just last for that sprint. And after that, there is no accumulation towards something bigger that is expected. However, we do operate in an incremental environment. So we still are expected to provide these stepping stones, as the Scrum Guide describes the increment, towards something that's usable, helpful, providing value. The associated commitment for the increment is the definition of done. In simple terms, the definition of done is the checklist of all the things that need to be accomplished, need to be checked off for any particular product backlog item in order to meet some quality expectation. Not everyone agrees with me on this, but I like to look at acceptance criteria as functional quality. Is our deliverable behaving the way it was expected from the user's perspective? And the definition of done is the measure of technical quality. It's all those things that we have to account for in order to successfully deliver something that can be viewed as complete. Do you have documentation requirements in order for the work item to be complete? Well, that should go into your definition of done. Different types of tests. Certainly, there's going to be things like unit and system and integration tests. But what about other tests related to security, for example, or financial assessment, possibly having to go through an audit? Many different things have to be accounted for. And the more we can include in our definition of done, the more complete our increment will end up being when it's delivered. Now, I also like to try to keep the definition of done within the bounds of a sprint. The sprint is this delineated time period where we're trying to deliver something of value. So it does seem to make sense to me that we should complete work. We should meet the definition of done within that allocated period of time. That's how we bring incremental value. Expecting that your definition of done is going to span across multiple sprints raises some questions about the whole iterative and incremental approach of sprinting. I think it's even reasonable to ask the question, well, why sprint at all if we cannot get to done within the bounds of a sprint? Now, the definition of done needs to be understood and agreed upon by all members of the Scrum team. What if you have multiple Scrum teams? Well, if they're all following a standard in order to contribute to a larger product objective, then it would be reasonable that they would all have the same definition of done for that product. What about having different definitions of done for different types of product backlog? Yes, that's reasonable also. However, I do think it's very helpful to have a minimum standard definition of done. And then for each particular product backlog, the team could decide, okay, do we need to modify that minimum standard definition of done for this particular item versus that particular item? Now, the best way to put together your definition of done is just get together with your teammates and start making a list. What are all the things we have to account for? And what are some of the things that we're concerned will not fit into a definition of done that can be completed within the bounds of a sprint? And then work with your team over time to expand your definition of done, to try to take more and more into your definition of done until at some point you have everything covered within the delivery time frame of your sprint.